We're going to start another part of our communication series here, the Rusticator Communications. We're going to talk about CB radio. Okay, CB radio. To continue on our little series here, first of all, CB, you can't communicate with your GMRS radios. They're just not compatible. Yes, the new CBs now are on FM, but it's a different frequency than the GMRS. So you don't have cross compatibility there. Maybe eventually somebody will make a CB GMRS type radio. But until now, you just have separate radios. Made up a little list here, probably too much for you to see on the screen, but pros and cons of the CB radio. Pros, there's many out there. I kind of look at the CB radio for use as a rusticator as infotainment, travel info. If I have to go down to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I'm on the freeway, particularly as I get closer to the big cities, I kind of want to know what's going on with traffic. There still are truckers that are using the CB to pass on information about roadblocks and stuff like that. The other thing you can think about CBs after you've got your communications set with your GMRS or FRS, I might think about it for shit hit the fan. The first few days after Hurricane Helene hit, some communities, that's how they were communicating, because a lot of people had an old CB stashed away in the garage. They had access to car batteries and an antenna, and they rigged up rudimentary CB base stations so they could stay informed. They're not going to broadcast long ways in that form, but they do pass on information, and they're pretty reliable, pretty easy to work. You don't have to have any license, or there's no real rules on the how you use it, and we'll get back to that in here in a little bit. Now they're available in AM and FM. AM, your range is limited unless you got weird atmospheric conditions, and then you get bounce off of solar stuff, and there's a whole thing that I won't go into that. There's other channels that cover that better. Also, the AM, according to the experts, they say the AM isn't as affected by electrical interference, like power lines, things like that, or engine noise. I'm not so sure about that, but I have used CB radios in some pretty rough vehicles that had a lot of the old-fashioned electrical noise that you could barely make the normal stock radio work in them, and the CB still got out a little ways. So those are the pros for the CB radio. So it's something to think about to have in your list of items to procure for your rusticator lifestyle. It also gives you a taste of what's going on in the world. It's kind of fun on some days that you can hear people broadcasting from the middle of the desert in California all the way up here to northern Wisconsin. Hear people talking from Florida, the East Coast, stuff like that. What they have is boosters for their CBs, so they're putting out a whole lot more wattage than the little 4 watts that I've got in my little CB here from Radiodity in the truck. Now the cons, CB radios are the wild, wild west. There's no real rules. People do all sorts of stuff on it. Channel 6, they call that the Super Bowl. That's where the guys with the big transmitting power get on there, and they just go on to some weird rants just to basically to broadcast, to hear themselves broadcast. So also, if you want to transmit, you want to talk to somebody else on a CB, they are antenna sensitive. So that's a whole other realm of stuff. You have to set it up for their correct SWR. There's a whole deal about antenna lengths, and the big thing is the taller your antenna is, if it's properly tuned, you're going to get further on your transmission, even at 4 watts. But they are sensitive to antennas for transmitting. Receiving, you can pick up a lot of stuff even on a short antenna and a not well-tuned CB. You're going to hear a lot of chatter, especially when the guys are going with the big transmitters. Will that help you in a shit hit the fan? It may, because there's an awful lot of people that have grandpa or uncle or whoever having that old CB gathering dust in the garage, you got access to batteries because you got cars all over the place. And if you can find an antenna that works on it, you can be good to go to at least hear a little bit, transmit a little bit. The other thing is, in the AM form, it is a shorter range unless you have atmospheric conditions right, and then there's no guarantee that you're going to know that your signal got anywhere because they might not be able to transmit back to you. But in short range, you know, mile, couple miles, depending on the terrain, yeah, you're probably going to do pretty good with a CB. There isn't any repeaters on the GMRS, and we didn't really go into that when I was talking about FRS and GMRS. That's a whole other segment of radio stuff. If you want to get into the rabbit hole of radios, that's another thing you can go down. But it is something to consider. They're not real expensive. I'll put a link in the description to this little Radioddity AM FM CB. It does have a scan, which is kind of nice. So if you want to find out where the locals are talking on CB, put it on scan, drive around while you're doing your stuff. If it picks up a channel, you kind of remember what that channel is and check back there every once in a while, and you can find out kind of who's using CBs, where and when. It's something to put back in your little notebook for Rusticator Communications. You never know when it might come in handy. So that's all I got today about CB radios. This is part 3 of our radio series. I'll get into some of the particular radios we use here on the farm on my next video. Thank you.